Alrighty, this time you're looking at another long-awaited project. This is my 1961 International Scout 80. This thing came from a field in Healy, Alaska, where it had been sitting for quite some time. The last tag on the license plate that was on it was 1976, and well, it might have been beaten off-road for a couple more years after that, but it's still a true survivor. This thing has amazing patina, and that is one thing that's definitely going to get preserved. Not too often you see these early International Scouts, especially these Scout 80s. One thing that's even more rare, because everybody's changing them out all the time, are these early sliding windows. So this was, to my understanding at least, 1960 and 1961 only, really. And then they went to the standard roll-up windows. And of course you'd slide this pane forward, or you'd slide this one backwards if you wanted wind or anything. There was a little divider thingy here made out of aluminum with a little turn knob that you could put on, and that would put some tension on the glass so it didn't rattle as you drove. It's a little loose. Inside this highly luxurious interior, you've got a T90 3-speed and a Dana 18 transfer case, just like early Willys Jeeps had. International didn't see any issue with them, so they kept them. All the knobs, you've got defrost there, that would put air through that vent. You've got vent, moving on down, you've got your ashtray, choke, vent, and defrost, and I do believe that missing hole was another switch that we took out. I've got all the brakes there. I've had this project for about 3 years now. It's kind of a sour story for me. Did all this work to the engine and it wound up being bum. So we're gonna breathe another life into this project, and hopefully this time we will be successful. Pardon all the sticks I'm stepping on. Another early Scout thing is the IH emblem on the tailgate. Later on they went to a International in letters up top, and then a Scout in script. So that's a cool thing that I like about this thing. I do have the taillight lenses. If you checked out our other video, you might know what those seats go to. Those are seats for the Mustang. Got vent parts. That's a toolbox. That lid flips up and then it goes all the way down. It's got quite a bit of storage in it, and then on this side you have your fuel tank there. And if this Scout had dual fuel tanks, of course, that would be a fuel tank and not a toolbox. The Scout, as you might be able to see, has just been absolutely beaten off-road and on-road. Big dent there. If we go over here, of course you can see the edge of the tailgate's all dented. We have the torn fender there, and then damage right there. Body panels are all rippled and everything, but if you crawl underneath, unlike most Scouts, this one is, I'd say, rock solid. I'll show you the floorboard in a moment on the driver's side. Had the fuel tank out, made sure it was clean. Still need the rubber hose that goes down to it. Of course, these early Scouts, the tire flung mud up into here, and they just got chock full of dirt and whatnot, so they always rusted out down there. And this one is very guilty of getting full of dirt. You can see the only real rot in the body of this Scout is right there. If the camera would focus better. Right there is the only real rot in this thing. That wonderful field patina. This door hinge broke at one point. They brazed it all back together. I cut the top of that pin off trying to get it out, and I actually have a new hinge to replace that one because this door actually bends down at the bottom when you open it. You can see all that movement's in the door, not the hinge. Really don't want to do any more damage to it. I am missing a pane of glass for this door. Down here you can see my floors. They're more ripped than they are rotten, like all tore up there and everything. A little bit of rust, of course, but what are you gonna do? These early Scouts, another thing, they had this bulkhead to them that went between the front and the back, which I really like, in my opinion. If you had something heavy in the back, you slam on the brakes, it's not gonna give you permanent back problems. And this is also, obviously, if you had one of these with the half cab, the little short pickup top, that's where that would have bolted down to. Scout 80s had a fold down windshield. That was an option they took away when you went to the Scout 800, the next model. Brake master cylinder on the floor, of course, because you don't need to stop. Something I haven't seen before, maybe everybody else is familiar with, is this mirror has, for when you go to dim it for driving at night, you flip this switch and the whole mirror glass moves. I really like that detail. Something pretty cool and custom, I think. I close this door on the first latch there so it doesn't bend it any more than it has to. Back up at the front of the Scout, see my hood's a little damaged. Of course it got hit there, it's torn there, big front end damage. I've got something to fix the front end damage. This is where the windshield would have folded down to and latched with that little guy there. Of course you can see this hood flew up at one point in time, that's why it's all bent, and it did that giant dent right there. Into the old shed of disappointment, we have a Slant 4 152. This engine, as a lot of people who know a little bit about Scouts will tell you, is half of International's V8, and that's exactly what they did. They took a 304 V8 and they cut it in half. Stuff like the pistons, the cylinder head, the valve cover, of course, the oil pan, all of these things are the exact same between the two engines. The heater box would go back there, that's not on there, of course. And there'd be duck toes running around the engine bay. Something to work on, but of course, as you do, you get a little disappointed with a project and you shove it here and kind of forget about it for a year, and now we're back at it. And what do you do when you have one forgotten project? You go and buy another one. If you were wondering what my solution was to the front end damage, there it is. That grill guard is most definitely going on the blue Scout. Got this Scout in a partner deal with a trade. I got this Scout and the parts Mustang. Both of these will end up being parts, but I might hold on to this Scout. It's going to donate that grill guard, these locking hubs, to my blue one. Pretty complete inside. This isn't how we trailered it. I actually folded the windshield down when we trailered it home so it didn't do any damage. No rear axle, but the old hood skid worked out fine. That's an example of a later Scout tailgate with the block International letters and then the script Scout. That rear bumper is going to be going on the other one. You can see this Scout has some pretty bad damage to it here. If we reach in here, that's what I'm saying, they fill up with dirt. This one is filled up to the brim right there. See that rust there is from all that dirt just sitting in there. If you guys ever want to know a whole lot about Old Internationals, check out Binder Boneyard. That's something that Dan Hayes just had in a recent video, is always make sure you clean that out good. Custom floor mat. This Scout actually already has the old road sign floor repair. All the gauges are actually in there and intact. This Scout was in a really old yard down in Tok, and the guy's wonderful and helped us get this thing loaded and set up and good to go. And he takes really good care of these things when they sit in his yard. This Scout was another early one, and I think this tailgate's not actually original to it, because this Scout actually had the early sliding windows in it, which I believe the sliding windows went away before the big International emblem went away on the tailgate. There's a bunch of odds and ends and parts. This Scout actually also came with a transmission and transfer case. They're just down at the shop. Some of the damage in the floors. I got some pretty big plans for this Scout, and I think I'm going to wait a little while to reveal them to everybody. Build a little suspense maybe if we get a bunch of followers and so on. I was curious about that. If anybody here knows anything about Mopars, they could tell you that they put car tickets under the seat that tells you everything about the car from the factory, and that's International's version of it. That's a line set ticket. Those in these Scouts were mounted right there, and that would have had every detail that the Scout had from the factory. You can actually give a company your VIN number, and they can find those and get them to you new, so you can figure out exactly how your Scout was outfitted. Hiding under this tarp, we had a terrible rainstorm last night, so we covered this thing up. Another 152 slant 4. We're going to pull some parts out of that for my other one. I really want the blue one to stay with stock power, keeping it IH red. This grill guard's just magnificent. Unfortunately, it's welded, so all that's going to get cut off, and we're going to find a way to mount it on my other one. Hiding underneath, you can see it used to be a very similar blue to my other one. That heater box that should be on the firewall of the other one as well. So yeah, that's my tale of two Scouts here. We're gonna try and get the blue one back on the road within a year or so, I think. There's going to be a lot of updates coming up, so do your thing and stay tuned to the project. Down at the shop today, getting some of these absolutely sassy bias plies mounted up for the old blue Scout there. And these wheels are actually factory 16-inch steel wheels that came on that Scout. It originally had 6.0 16 tires, and these are 650 16, just a little bit bigger. But I figured I dug this one out of the old attic in the shop here because I put this one up. If I can get the right angle on it and the camera will focus. It's still got the original IH sticker tag on it from the factory, and unfortunately I'm gonna have to peel that off. I'm gonna try and keep it as intact as I can, but that's some really cool stuff that I had with this Scout. Is these set of 4 original wheels, and then I found this, it's a little rusty, but I found this 5th one at the dump, and I do believe that's a factory flat fender Jeep item. But it's pretty darn close, and I think it'll make for a pretty mint spare. But yeah, just pulled out the camera, thought that tag was rad, and yeah, just how original that Scout kind of is, and some of the cool details it's got going on.